And joining me now to talk about these issues is Michael Chertoff. He was Homeland Security Secretary from 2005 to 2009, and he's now chairman and co-founder of the Chertoff Group, a security consulting firm. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Good to be here.
So this Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, it was created during the Bush administration. Some members of the board complained that, first of all, they learned about some programs that they were supposed to be keeping an eye on by reading the newspaper, not from the White House, that a report that they did had been edited by the White House. It was not the bipartisan report that they put together. The White House meddled. I guess some things were changed since then. How important was this board to you and the Bush administration during the period you served as Secretary of Homeland Security?
When I was at DHS, we actually had our own privacy officer, and that was kind of the department analog to the board. Our privacy officer was very, very helpful to us. It was important to be able to get a perspective from the privacy standpoint about some of the regulations and measures we were considering, and we viewed that person as an ally and as a valued advisor and not as an adversary. And I think properly used, the government-wide board, the oversight board, can play that important function.
A new document was published by The Guardian, leaked by Edward Snowden, the NSA leaker. It indicates that this FISA court has rules, and it depends on your perspective, I suppose, but one of the things that came out in this document, and it dates from 2007 when you were at DHS, is that they can hold on to details of Americans' data for 5 years, and they can retain and make use of information that is called inadvertently acquired, stuff that they didn't mean to acquire, but they have. They can use that. Should Americans not be concerned about that? That does seem to be a giant loophole through which any analyst could do almost anything if it's quote-unquote inadvertently acquired.
Actually, I think it ought to comfort people. So there are two parts to this. First of all of these rules are reviewed and approved by an independent court. And if there's a breach of the rules, the court polices that and, if necessary, sanctions the government. I know some of the judges on the court from when I was a judge, not on that court. And I will tell you, they take very seriously their responsibilities under the law. The second thing is, you know, we talk about inadvertent monitoring. I'll give you a practical example. Let's say you're monitoring a phone call involving a terrorist overseas, and they call a number, and it turns out that it's an American number. Now, normally you would say, well, it's an American citizen, we're going to discard that. But let's say during the conversation, before you ascertain who it is, they're talking about a bombing attack. Well, at that point, you have the right to say, look, even though I'm not targeting the American, something has now emerged that indicates that this American is, in fact, involved in terrorism. Then you go back to the court. The court then allows you to pursue that further. So at each step of the process, and this was true prior to 9/11 as well, there's a set of rules, there's a set of requirements, and then if someone wants to move to the next level, a court gets involved.
There's a report that Snowden is trying to get to Iceland. Although there is an extradition treaty the United States has with Iceland. Do you think that the government knows where Snowden is, and can the government, based on your knowledge of its capabilities, prevent him from getting to Iceland?
Well, first of all, I don't know if they know where he is. Obviously, if you're traveling and you're transversing countries that have treaties with the United States, those countries could, when you land at an intermediate point, you know, arrest you, pull you off the plane, provided there's an arrest warrant issued by the government. Now, there may be one, it may be sealed. This whole idea of going to Iceland when you first go to Hong Kong seems a little bit odd to me. In fact, it seems odd to me that he would go to China and say, oh, this is the place I go to get my freedom. So there are elements to this story that I suspect are not clear yet. And we're going to see some interesting things perhaps unfold in the next few weeks.
And last question, the U.S. and the Taliban are in negotiations right now. I know, as Moshe Dayan, the foreign minister of Israel, once said, you don't make peace with your friends, you make peace with your enemies. But there are a lot of people who are wringing their hands over whether or not the U.S. should be negotiating with the Taliban. What do you think?
You know, I think there are a couple dimensions to this. Look, it's obvious sometimes you have to negotiate with people who've been your enemies. And now, for example, we were very close friends with Japan and Germany. At one point, we were mortal enemies. On the other hand, there are some people who are off limits, people who have committed gross acts of terrorism or gross acts of savagery or atrocities really shouldn't be people who are party to negotiation. We also have to be very, very careful about releasing people who are the worst of the worst and enabling them to go back to the field of battle.
So if you work for President Obama right now, you would tell him, not to, there's this hypothetical trade right now between Bo Bergdahl, the sergeant, who is being held captive in exchange for 5 senior Taliban operatives. You would tell him not to do that trade.
I would say that trading hostages, even though we desperately want to get our own back, is a very dangerous road to go down. You know, the Israelis faced this over a number of years. The problem is when you do that, you're sending a signal that people who are captured improperly become bargaining chips. And that's a dangerous signal to send. So, you know, you can never say never, but I would be very, very careful before I made any kind of a deal involving releasing very bad guys in return for either negotiating a resolution to some conflict or getting a prisoner back.
All right. Former Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Michael Chertoff, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.